All right. I think we're live. I believe so. Just takes a second sometimes, guys. Guys, thank you very much for everyone who's here joining us live today. I really appreciate all you guys coming online to watch us. Uh, a lot of you have been wanting me to do the show again and invite the Apostate Prophet on again. So it's a real pleasure of mine to invite the Apostate Prophet back to the show. So first and foremost, hey man, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a while. I've been meaning to have you back on for a while. I've been getting a ton of requests to have you back on for a while. So first and foremost, it's great to have you on. And there's a ton of things that I want to talk to you about. But let's maybe start with something pretty major that you produced recently. You know, you dropped a pretty large video and a pretty comprehensive video about scientific mistakes in the Quran. And
Yeah.
my first question is, uh, why? Why did you feel the need to make such a comprehensive video on scientific mistakes in the Quran?
Well, it was a long process. Well, first off, I made some videos long ago, actually, half a year ago or so, about analyzing the Quran further. I made this specific video in which I talked about a contradiction or a false statement in the Quran about the characters Mary in the Bible, or about the two Marys in Christianity and Judaism, and the Quran kind of gets them wrong and misidentifies them, and the thing is, it's a mistake that I was aware of, but that I never really cared much about. When I, sorry.
No, you're good.
When I delved more into it, when I cared more about it and studied it further, I discovered how amazing it is that there is such a blatant mistake in the Quran that people just seemingly ignore. You know, that we are not really talking about, because it is such a huge, such a bad mistake that really puts Islam in a very horrible position. And I also realized how amazing it is that when I released that specific study, that specific video, or two videos actually, I made two videos on the subject, on that whole Mary subject. The response from Islamic apologists was zero. There was nothing. You know, there were no responses, and people were asking them to respond, and they were like totally ignoring it. And I realized, hey, this is something, you know. And then I kind of fell in love with the idea of analyzing the Quran and pointing out its mistakes. And I had always looked at the scientific mistakes of the Quran, and I made a previous video which I called the 43 scientific mistakes of the Quran, which was a rather satirical video in which I went over the mistakes, kind of made fun of it a little bit. It was more an entertainment thing than an analysis. I thought, why do I not just sit down and study the Quran through again, make a note of all the scientific mistakes, and then write everything down, make a video of it. I also checked if there is such a video on YouTube. There is no video that collects all the mistakes. And I thought, okay, this will be my project. This will be the first thing. And it will be huge. And I will eagerly wait for Islamic apologists to respond to that. So I promised to make it once I reach 100,000 subscribers. Unfortunately, there has been a huge delay because the Quran is so ridiculous, and it took me so much time to actually to sit down and put everything together, write a script in which I could where I could limit the video to 1 hour and still make it as comprehensive as possible. But in the end, I did it, and so far the response is crickets. I don't know.
Right, that is very interesting, and I want to come to that really quick, but I want to talk a little bit about, you know, the sort of motivation behind making this video, because one of the things that I see when it comes to Islam and sort of religion in general is that the religious books are seen as infallible, that there can never be anything wrong with them. Particularly when you're looking at Islam, it is supposed to be the perfect religion, the most perfect thing ever created. So if you're actually creating a video where there's, you know, not one, not two, but numerous clear scientific mistakes, in the
60.
text, yeah, scientific mistakes in the text. What does that say about about the perfect nature of the religion as well,
Yeah, well, it is. Islam has this very, very special, unique, specific claim that that their religious book, their holy book, was directly authored by the Almighty Creator of the universe, who put this specific book together and revealed it directly, word for word, as it is, without any human or any different intervention to the humans. Allah gave it to the angel Gabriel, and the angel Gabriel directly gave it to Muhammad. And nothing got lost. It is entirely the word of the Almighty Creator, and in that text there are so many mistakes. Now, there are some excuses that are being made. Some people who are not really very familiar with the issue say, well, it's just a religious text. It's an old religious text. Of course it has mistakes. What is the big deal about it? The Bible has mistakes too. Oh, yes, of course. But the thing is, no other religion, no other book makes this claim that this specific book is directly, word for word, the word of the Almighty Creator, that there has been nothing changed about it, that there is no human finger, no human pen on it at all. Islam is the only one that makes this claim. So if there is only one mistake in the Quran, one mistake about the nature of the world or about anything, about a historical fact, then it means that this book is wrong, that it is not factual, and that means that the entire religion is false, because the entire religion rests on the claim that this book was sent by Allah directly, and that everything it says is true, and
Right.
that's why Islam is the right religion. If the Quran has a mistake, has only one mistake, this means Islam is a giant fraud. And you can't say the same about any other religion, because if for any other religion you could explain it in some way, because it's humans who make reports, it's humans who write things down, it's humans who get inspiration, whatever. But Islam is the only religion that really has this. And
Right.
it also says in the Quran itself, it says, have the people not considered, or something like that. If there was any, if this book was from any other than Allah, then they would definitely find therein a contradiction or discrepancy. The book itself makes that claim. So if you take the book's claim itself and then prove that there is a mistake in the Quran, this means the whole religion is discredited.
Right.
That is amazing.
So now let's come to the response part. Like, what's a common response that Muslims make to this argument that there are so many mistakes in a so-called perfect religious text?
Well, one of the things they say is a very cliche response phrase, which doesn't really mean anything, which is the Quran is not a book of science, but a book of signs. It doesn't mean anything.
What does that mean? The hell?
It's a book of science, not of science. It
Right.
doesn't mean anything at all. It's a
Right.
ridiculous response to just evade the whole thing. It's like, well, it doesn't make any scientific claims. It just gives you signs to understand the universe, or to understand the world around you, or to understand God. But that doesn't mean anything. The Quran clearly makes very, very clear scientific assertions, like what the stars are, what they do, what the sun is, where the sun goes at night, and all that kinds of stuff. So that phrase is a completely ridiculous phrase. It doesn't really mean anything. Another response is, of course, other responses can be collected in very, very heavy but deceptive apologetics around what these verses actually mean. And I have presented such apologetics in that video as well. And I want to make a series in which I want to summarize all these mistakes, in which I want to go into those apologetics too. For example, there is a thing. There's this one of my favorite mistakes is that is where the Quran says that the sun sets in a muddy spring.
Right.
This character called Dhul-Qarnayn goes to the setting place of the sun and finds the sun setting in a muddy spring, which is a ridiculous verse, which kind of shows the primitive nature of the time and place where the Quran was authored. Now the Islamic apologist comes out and says in response to this very, very clear mistake that I am just misunderstanding it. I am the one who's misrepresenting what clearly stands there.
Right.
And what it actually means, although it doesn't say that, but what it actually means, and can't can't manage to mean is that this character called Zulkarnain only saw it that way. He only saw it as if the sun was setting in Amadi Spring, and that we shouldn't take it too literally. Although the text really clearly says he went to the place where the sun sets, and he found it setting in Amadi Spring. That's really directly what the text itself says. Stuff like that. I mean, the apologetics are very poor. For some mistakes, there are not even any responses because you can't come up with any responses.
Right.
But that's about how the responses are. Yeah.
That is interesting, because you're thinking that this is the Word of God, and this is the infallible Word of God. This is something that's perfect, cannot be changed, so on and so forth. At the same time, if God's trying to get a message across to His people, He's saying, hey man, listen to me, this is what I'm trying to tell you to do. Why would He put so many riddles and wordplay in there? Why wouldn't He just say, this is where the sun sets, bro, deal with it?
That's the issue. The Quran could have. I made a few tweets after this whole after I released this whole thing. The Quran could have given people very clear instructions, very clear descriptions of things around us that people of the time didn't know. That we could have understood later and thought, wow, the Quran actually told us that. But no, there is nothing like that. The Quran gives us ridiculous narratives about how the sun has a resting place, and the stars fall down from the sky, and the sky falls down, and whatever. And we somehow have to ignore the text now. In the 21st century, we have to look at the text and say and think, oh, the Quran doesn't actually mean what it says here. It actually means something different. We shouldn't take it so literally. But what kind of logic is that? What kind of God is that, who's at the same time trying to invite you to this religion, and who's saying if you don't believe in it you will burn in hell forever, but at the same time he's also putting these weird things into the text that could confuse any normal person, where you have to think about it more and think about it metaphorically so that you can understand it and save yourself from hellfire. Right. And what kind of absolutely ridiculous, stupid logic is that? It doesn't make any sense at all. And this book is supposed to be made really for humans to be guided, for all humankind and other creatures to be guided. But it is full of hidden weird language, full of weird metaphors that would confuse any random person. So it is really weird. Yeah,
that's very interesting. So far, have you had any kind of rebuttal to the video that you've made for the scientific mistakes?
No, that's what I'm so surprised about. I mean, I received so many messages, so many people. I've seen so many of those regular apologists who like to talk about me say stuff like, "Oh, he's going to make the scientific mistakes now. I wonder what he's going to say. Ha ha ha. We're gonna attack that. We're gonna debunk that. Whatever." But one week has passed. I haven't seen anything so far. No response at all. Really, no response at all. And I'm. To be fair, it's a 1-hour video with 60 points, so I want to give them some time with this and see what they come up with. But I'm really waiting for them to give me responses, because it's part of the plan. Because I want to take those responses. I want to include everything they have to say. I want to be fair in this. I want to include all their responses, all their rebuttals, and I want to go into it and make another series of videos in which I will discuss all their rebuttals.
Right. All right. Well, yeah, I think that's fair. Let's give them another week or so. Let's see what they come up with. There's a super chat here that I want to just quickly acknowledge. Shashidharan, thank you very much for the super chat. He has a question for you, Ridwan. He's wondering, what's your advice to the closet atheists in Islamic regions? How do you think they can best express themselves without getting in too much danger?
Well, I would always. It's a difficult issue. I would always suggest using anonymous platforms or anonymous names and accounts online to find people who think the same way. I would also suggest trying to really connect to other people from the same culture because many people. Even people in very secular countries like Turkey, for example. When I was in Turkey and I stopped believing in Islam, I thought I was the only one. I thought there was no one else, and that's how That's how people who don't believe or people who leave Islam think when they are in such countries. They think they are the only one. There is no one else around them. But then when you start looking for it, you actually realize that there are a lot of people who are in the same boat. Who also don't believe in this specific thing, but they don't want to make it public, and they have a platform where they share. So I would always suggest sharing. I would also suggest becoming independent, trying to live your own life, getting out of the life of parents if you still live with parents. Possibly, some people prefer moving to different countries. Also a good solution. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the internet's been such a blessing for a lot of these people,
Absolutely.
because earlier, pre-internet, like some of these people, if you're having doubts, there's literally no one you can talk to. So you just either live in the closet and that's how you spend your life, while you maintain this facade outside of the closet. But now you're actually able to, even if you're under a pseudonym or something, you're able to get out there, you're able to talk to other people, and eventually maybe if you talk to enough people, you can gather enough courage to maybe come out and be like, you know what, this is how I genuinely feel now.
Absolutely. Well, the internet is revolutionary. We live in such a time now where things have changed so quickly. We make the progress that we used to make in a few hundred years or in a few decades. We make it in a year today because of the internet. We can communicate with other people from the other side of the world and can exchange opinions, can experience cultures. We can find so many different opinions. We can be anonymous and share everything that we can share in society. It is really great. I think it has helped me a lot, and I'm sure it helps many others who need it.
Right, right. There's another super chat here from Yashwan Naik. Yashwan, thank you. Says, great work, guys. I'm a huge fan of Sham and AP. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
much
so much.
appreciated. I want to talk about something that's been it's been a bit of a feature among Muslim populations in certain countries, and it was really brought to the fore recently by an actor in India. This is an actor that has been making statements like these quite regularly, but I think it speaks to a broader narrative as well. What he was basically saying that, it was an incredibly funny video. You have to like watch it to really enjoy the irony of it. But he was basically saying that, Muslims are such victims, and woe is me, and we're so persecuted everywhere. At the same time, he was saying that one day the whole world's going to be Muslim. At the same time, he said the Quran says that inshallah the whole world's going to be Muslim one day. Quran says that inshallah every person in India one day is going to be saying there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. And I'm just saying, I just think to myself, that is an incredible state of mind to be in. Being a victim and being a supremacist at the same time.
Yeah.
And it really seems to be a sort of a trend in a lot of countries where a sizable Muslim population is present. Maybe they're not the majority, but there is a sizable population. And what do you owe that sort of simultaneous victimhood / supremacist mindset to?
Let me tell you, it's not just a trend among bigger Muslim populations. It's actually very common Muslim thinking. When you grow up in Muslim culture, when you are raised a Muslim, you learn two things at the same time. You learn that the entire world is against you, that everyone is against you, that everyone wants to persecute you, everyone hates Islam, everyone hates Muslims, they all want to deceive you and trick you and whatever. You can't trust anyone. That's basically literally what you learn as a Muslim, and that's what most Muslims learn regarding the non-believer, regarding the infidel. I was personally told, as well as so many others, as well as even people who don't really come from very religious families. It's a very common thing that to be told that you can't trust non-Muslims. You can't trust. In my culture, on my side of the world, it was you can't trust Christians, you can't trust atheists, you can especially never trust Jews. How dare you even speak of it? And I bet on the other side, when you are confronted with Hindus, it's you can't trust Hindus, and in the same way you learn all the time that everyone wants to persecute Islam, which is also based on the idea, on fundamental Islamic teachings that the polytheists in Mecca, who were Muhammad's enemies, persecuted the Muslims, and the Muslims, of course, did nothing wrong ever at all, and Islam came out of persecution, and people will always want to persecute us. At the same time, while learning this, you also learn that Islam gloriously spread by fighting these bad infidels who, of course, were so shameful that they wanted to protect their own culture from being forcibly converted. Who so shamefully wanted to protect their lands and their people and wanted to keep them, and Islam gloriously defeated them and spread the religion.
Right.
You learn these two things at the same time. On top of that, you also learn, as you said, that in the future everyone will be Muslim, or most people will be Muslim. Most people will convert to Islam. We always heard fairy tales about how English people will convert to Islam, how German people will convert to Islam. America will probably become Muslim, or stuff like that. You learn these fairy tales while also believing that you are the most persecuted group and that you can't trust anyone, but that Allah will somehow make it happen. But and that you are also supposed to go out there and convert as many people to Islam as you can, because it is an obligation on Muslims. So it is really a very, very messed up mindset. And let me tell you one thing. At the same time, while learning all of this, you also learn the divisive idea that not only does everyone want to persecute you and everyone deceive you, you also learn that Muslims are one nation. Muslims are one fraction in this world, and there is only one other nation, and that is the infidel. So the infidel is one nation and Muslims are one nation. The infidel are all the same. They all help each other against the Muslims. That is literally what you learn, and that is what they tell you. It's a very common phrase. Kufr is one nation, so infidel is one nation, and Islam is one nation. It's a very common thing you learn. So it is an entirely Islamic way of thinking, a very toxic way of thinking.
How many people do you think realize that contradiction in the Muslim world? Do you think there are people that realize that contradiction and is like, how are you guys acting like the most oppressed people while saying that one day we're going to convert the whole world to Islam?
They don't. I actually thought about this one thing. It's related. It's not directly an answer to your question, but it's related. You learn under Islam constantly that Islamic people fought wars and basically beat Islam into the other into the others heads and whatever. You learn that the Ottomans so proudly fought the bad Byzantines and spread Islam gloriously and did the right thing and stuff like that. You learn all these things as a Muslim, but you somehow don't really grasp that means that you spread the religion by the sword. Those two things somehow don't go together. Only when you are you learn, oh, we fought all these wars. We of course it's always we. It's not even our ancestors. It's we. We fought. We beat them. We spread Islam. We fought for Allah. We did this. We did that. And then a non-Muslim approaches you and says, "Is it right that Islam spread by the sword?" And you're like, "No, no. Like, why would you think that? That's a lie." It's
That's
kind
amazing.
Yeah, it is.
It's kind of amazing, yeah.
because you don't learn it from that aspect.
Right.
You learn that it was always a rightful, an honorable, a wonderful, a good thing to do. And no one ever tells you that it was probably a bad idea, and that this literally translates to spreading Islam by the sword. When you are suddenly confronted with the question, you think, wait, that's bad. That can't be true, because we were right with the good stuff, So your question is obviously a no.
Right.
And in the same way you don't grasp that these two ideas, that you are persecuted and that everyone hates you and that everyone wants you to be one of them and they want to trick you, but also that you should spread Islam and that everyone should become Muslim and that everyone should listen to you, that these two ideas are somehow a complete contradiction and reveal you to be stupid about things. You know,
Right.
you don't understand that. It doesn't really process very well because you get this through major Islamic indoctrination, where Islam is always right, and every other culture and every other religion, everything before Islam is always wrong.
Yeah, that brings me to another interesting question, at least from my point of view, because one of the things that I've noticed is the issue that I particularly tend to have, or people from my culture or my background tend to have with Islam, is the idea of exclusivity, the idea of exclusivism. That, like you said just now, that we're the only ones that are right and everybody else is wrong, and we're the only ones that have the correct answers, and everybody else is plotting against us. Everybody else is evil, and everybody else is the oppressor. And so it is our sacred religious duty to rid the world of these oppressors who are plotting against, the Prophet and Allah. And so what I feel, and I fear, that the problem that creates, that kind of an exclusivist ideology creates, is it dehumanizes other people. It
It
dehumanizes
does.
non-Muslims. The problem with dehumanizing other people is that once you dehumanize them, once you take away your shared humanity with those people, it becomes very easy to attack them. It becomes very easy to hurt them and kill them. And I am 100% fully aware that not all Muslims are like this. There are many Muslims that just want to live their lives peacefully and get on with their lives and get on very well with their non-Muslim neighbors. But I'm saying that as long as such an ideology or such a way of thinking, such an exclusivist mindset exists, there are always going to be people that will take these words seriously, because that's how they're meant to be taken, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they're meant to be taken seriously. So is there any surprise that there is a significant proportion of the Muslim population that takes these kinds of words seriously, and that goes ahead and dehumanizes people of non-Muslim cultures? So I wonder, like, the people who do not take these things very seriously, or who do not feel anger or hatred towards their non-Muslim neighbors, I wonder if they realize this problem that exists inherently in their philosophy.
Well, they don't. I mean, you summarize it very, very, very well, actually. How Islam paints its opponents as always at fault, and your own side always on the right side, which justifies basically everything. And as I just said, you learn this under heavy, strong Islamic indoctrination, which is I would definitely argue the strongest form of religious indoctrination that we have. And as part of this indoctrination, you always learn that I know that the answer is kind of in the question itself. You learn that you are always right,
Right.
that the other is always wrong. And if you learn that you are always right and the other is always wrong, and that you somehow have to correct the other, then you won't grasp the idea that what you are trying to do might be probably the wrong thing to do. Even if in the world we are currently talking about how these strategies, how this whole mindset of trying to forcibly change other people um, was divisive and wrong. You don't think about Muslims will think that way about everything else. They will think that Christians are supremacist, that Hindus are supremacist, that Jews want to destroy the Muslims and this and that. But they will never ever come up with the idea that their own mentality of turning everyone into a Muslim because everyone else is not great and everyone else is at fault, that is somehow a flawed and a bad way of thinking. It just doesn't get really through, and you have to make that clear. This is actually a nice conversation. I kind of think now, thanks to our conversation, that I should probably stress this issue a little bit more in future talks, because this is a really interesting thing where you could awaken a lot of Muslim people. But yeah, this is basically what it is.
Yeah, because the thing is that that's been the biggest issue, that when it comes to me, when it comes to the culture that I'm from and their history with Islam, that has been the biggest issue, because Hindu culture has always worked in a way where, if we come into contact with a new culture that we have not been in contact with before, we'll just be like, all right, tell me about your guy. And if we like your guy, we'll add him. It's like collecting Pokemon cards in a way. It was like, all right, tell me about your guy. If we like your guy, we'll add him to the millions and millions that we have. Because,
Uh-huh.
a new way of thinking is something, if we enjoy it, we add him to our so-called pantheon, and that is how Indian culture has worked when it's come into contact with either the Greeks or the Central Asian various Central Asian tribes. So and that's how it's always worked. But Islam was a very rude awakening, or a very rude sort of shock for Indian culture, because they didn't want to discuss their culture with us. B, they were like, well, the only way that you can have Allah and Muhammad is if you get rid of all your other Pokemon cards. That is the only way you get this Pokemon card. I'm like, bro, that doesn't make any sense, and so I think that's a conversation worth having between Muslims themselves, and maybe to create a better dialogue between sort of Muslim and non-Muslim cultures as well, is sort of working to realize their common humanity. Here's another question. It's a super chat question from Kaushik Sunil Mohanty. Thanks, Kaushik, for the super chat. Appreciate it. Says, love you both, and the question is for both. Do Muslims realize and fully understand what's in the Quran, or do you think most of it is just blind faith of what they hear?
Most of it is just blind. I mean, I would carefully say that most Muslims have never read the Quran in a language they understand.
Wow.
I don't even have to be careful about that. It's very common basic knowledge that the vast majority of Muslims, even Muslim scholars, even many Muslim sources admit that, say that most Muslims have never read the Quran fully in a language that they can comprehend and understand. When you publicly say that Muslims don't read the Quran, some come up with this ironic response saying, what are you talking about? Muslims recite the Quran every day during prayer. Well, okay, but how do you really do that? You recite specific verses during a prayer, and you recite it in Arabic, in an old Arabic language that not even current Arabs can understand, or that not even current Arabic speakers can understand. And Arabic speakers are a minority among Muslims. So let's say most Muslims are also kind of against this whole idea of reading the Quran in a language other than Arabic, because they have this idea that it can never be fully translated, so they don't do it. Which is why they think it should be read in Arabic in order to properly understand it. But most Muslims can't understand and speak Arabic, so they have to rely on advices given by others. Not even among those who speak Arabic is it a common thing that people have thoroughly read the Quran. So by all this information, you can assume that the vast majority of Muslims have never read and understood the Quran, which is really a sad, weird, tragic thing.
Right.
I mean, when you leave Islam,
it's not like you have 20 books. It's just the one, man.
Yeah, yes, and it's not even a huge book. It is quite long and very, very extremely boring. It is very, very painful to read, because it's so repetitive and so full of just garbage. But I'm sorry for being so disrespectful on your channel, but that's but yeah, I mean, it's not even a big deal. You can sit down and read it, and we are in a time where we have acknowledged that you can translate basically everything. We have translated the most ancient languages the best way, where we can sit down and understand them. But some people still claim that you can't fully understand the Quran because they have to make excuses. Right. But we have translated the Quran. We have multiple translations of the Quran. I'm a student of linguistics, and it is a very common thing in linguistics that you get certified for translating a very important piece of literature, of writing, and especially if there are more versions of something that has been translated, then the reliability of it increases more and more and more, because you can put those translations together, and you can kind of understand what is really being said when the translators make different translations of a specific text. So you can really sit down in today's time and read the Quran, but most people still haven't done it. But if you are an ex-Muslim and you leave Islam, and you have many among ex-Muslims who go out and criticize Islam also have read the Quran. I have personally read it multiple times, numerous times. But you are told that you don't understand Islam because you left it. But so many Muslims do apparently understand the Quran, although most of them have never read the Quran. So it is really a very ironic, a very funny thing, which is why I want to make it kind of my mission to go out there and to talk to people about Islam, about the Quran, and to inform them about what really is in there.
Right.
Because you see how many people are very ignorant about it when you tell them.
Right. It's very interesting because there's one thing that I find that is sometimes really missed in the criticism of Islam, and there's a couple of ex-Muslims that I've spoken to, and their talks that I've watched, and listened to their journey of how they became an ex-Muslim. One of them's Hassan Radwan, and I listened to his conversation on the Charvaka podcast, that's Kushal Mehra's podcast with him, and he talked very extensively about how one of the things that really started his journey towards becoming an ex-Muslim was the whole idea of the treatment of women. And one of the most interesting things that I find, and one of the things that I really think that the liberal contingent all over the planet sort of misses a little bit is, they talk about, hey, criticism of Islam is basically Islamophobia, which it's not, which is a silly word. But at the same time, they talk so much about we need to bring women up, we need to believe women, and this is the women's time, and so on and so forth. But they're blissfully unaware or ignorant and turn their backs to the way women are treated in Islamic society, or how it is sanctioned within Islamic text on how you should be treating women. And why is that? Like, why ignore that such a major aspect of a philosophy just so you could shield it from criticism?
Well, first of it was a major dilemma for me too. I mean, I grew up in Germany. I moved to Turkey, and one thing that bothered me so much in Turkey was how women were poorly treated in Turkey. Which is not even a very religious country, which is kind of a secular country. But and later when I became very religious and I read the Quran, I realized that this whole thing was coming back, because the Quran is pretty horrible to women. So it is completely justified to say that this is a good reason to start doubting Islam, and many people do so. What is very funny is you come to the West, as you say, and there are these excuses made, and the criticism of the Islamic treatment of women, of the Islamic world's treatment of women is completely ignored, shut down, and whatever. I saw even this morning, Yasmin Mohammed talked about how women are oppressed in Islamic society, right. and then someone comes and says, "Oh, I wonder if she will also talk about how women are oppressed in fundamentalist Christian society." Right.
How about we stick to the topic for a second?
Yeah. First of, where have you ever seen that? Secondly, we are talking about Islam. Why does this always have to happen? Well, it is a thing. In the West, people have somehow bought into this stupid idea that any criticism of Islam is somehow motivated by racism, because 9/11 happened, the Twin Towers, right. The bombings in London happened, and all the other stuff happened, and many people on the right, or even in the center, or many on every side of the political spectrum, started talking about how Islam is related to this. This is how they got. How they got into contact with Islam for the first time, and they thought this is how Islam introduced itself to our society, and it is obviously dangerous. So it became kind of a popular thing among the right to criticize Islam and to disavow that, and to kind of to reject Islamic culture, to reject more Islamic influence, because everyone thought, well, we have seen what happened last time when we allowed Islam into our culture, and this kind of thinking kind of caused a reaction among left-leaning people and others to think that every criticism of Islam is also fueled by racism, because of prejudice, because of things like 9/11, right. Because it's a popular right-wing talking point, and that it's somehow racist. And we, as people who have compassion for minorities, because Islam is obviously a minority in the West right now, right. we have to stand up for Islam, and we have to defend it, we have to protect it, we have to shield it. We have to say that every kind of criticism of Islam is probably not a great idea, that we should be focused on our own flaws. Of course, this was very much sold to those people by by none other than Muslim activists.
Right.
You have people in the West now, like prominently known, like Ilhan Omar and Lina Sarsour and other people. You have, I bet, so many people in India too that I'm very unaware of,
Right.
who are Muslim activists and who spread contradictory messages and try to win over allies and try to tell them that Islam is completely misrepresented, that your knowledge on Islam is completely wrong, that Islam is actually a very, very peaceful culture,
Right.
and even more peaceful than Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, and every other possible ideology that you could possibly think of, or religion that you could possibly think of, or way of living, whatever you call it. So it's I don't know. It's a big net. We could talk about this forever, but it's a big net that I believe comes down to how Islam or how Muslims want to protect Islam from criticism, and have successfully sold this strategy of protecting Islam from criticism to gullible people in the West and in other places who
Right.
think that criticizing Islam was kind of was just a thing that was made out of prejudice. And I talk so much, I don't even know where.
No, I think you answered the question quite well. They're coming. A lot of the liberals that are supporting Islam in the West, especially the treatment of women in Islamic societies in the West, they're coming from a good place, but they're applying that in the worst way possible, because it's not helping the women in those Islamic societies in any
Yeah.
way. So, even though you're coming from a good place, you're not helping the situation in any way. Here's another super chat from Udayan Jadav. Udayan, thank you very much. He's asking why liberals support Islam. I think we just discussed that question.
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
Hopefully we were able to answer it to your satisfaction.
It is very ironic. Just to add, you see
Yeah.
very quickly that I could always give examples from the West. You see in America how people are so fiercely going out and protesting abortion restrictions because they think this is an absolute oppression of women by conservatives, by right wingers, by Christians, and this and that. Abortion. Seriously, I mean, you could talk about whether that is an oppression of women or not, but we are discussing that people think abortion is something that shouldn't be done because it is immoral, it is religiously considered immoral, and whatever, and many voices think that is an oppression of women, but they can spend no second on talking about whether forced hijab, male guardianship, the obvious oppression of women, where women have to stay home in society, where women are beaten, where marital rape or any kind of other rape is completely justified. That all these things are kind of are oppression. You have really no moment to talk about that, but you have so much time to yell and scream about abortion. There is really a giant hypocrisy going on here.
I mean, there is, and I'll give an example sort of close to home as well, from India. There's, you're talking about abortion, and sure, you can make the case that okay, abortion, you might consider it immoral, but should women have the right to do it within a certain time frame? Sure, I believe that women should have, at least within a certain time frame, have that kind of agency. And
Me
sure,
too.
it's a good conversation to be having, 100%. But at the same time, you're having that conversation, which is a good thing. You're talking about women's rights in Christian societies, which is a good thing. But then you completely, on the other hand, go ahead and ignore arguably much worse things that are happening to women in Islamic societies. I'll give you an example from India. In India, there is this practice called triple talaq, where all you need to do is, a Muslim man, all they need to do is say talaq, talaq, talaq 3 times to his wife, and he's legally divorced. In India, that is legally considered a divorce. So Indians like to give Pakistan so much shit about, being a failed state and useless country and all of that stuff, but even bloody Pakistan has banned triple talaq, but India can't get itself to ban triple talaq because we're too secular for our own good. So,
Yeah.
and so right now there's the current government is bringing out a bill to overturn the whole triple talaq and make it illegal. And even now it's facing such stiff resistance from the Islamists and from the liberal class, because they're saying, oh, it's the Hindu government trying to target the Muslim communities. And I'm trying to think, how is that targeting the Muslim community? If you're saying that if you make saying talaq 3 times and divorcing your wife illegal, how the hell is that targeting them? You're basically trying to save the woman's life here.
Of course.
It's absolutely unbelievable to me how that is considered to be an okay practice. Even the practice of nikah halala, which you know what nikah halala is, you
Yeah, yeah.
know, even that practice is okay in India in a lot of places, and is still practiced because that's how if you if you do a triple talaq and divorce your wife, and if you want to get your wife back, then they must consummate with someone else first before they come back to the husband. And so even that practice is done in certain places in Muslim societies in India, and even that is something that the
Yeah.
liberals will come out and defend, and they'll say, you know what, that is their culture. Let them deal with it themselves. And I'm like, are you out of your goddamn minds? What are you doing?
It is one thing if you want to be quiet about things. It is one thing if you want to say, okay, this is one thing that we have to fight,
Yeah.
and then you are quiet about the other oppression that has more to do with Islam. It is one thing if you are quiet about it, but if you come out to defeat one kind of thing that you call abortion, one thing that you call oppression, but then you think that we shouldn't focus on the other thing at all. That is just giant hypocrisy, and you can't. And people like that are just not qualified to talk about oppression or anything at all.
Yeah, it is quite silly. This whole thing is really quite silly. Here's another super chat from Suyog, and this is a message for you, Ridwan. It says, tell Ridwan he's doing great work, and we often discuss his videos in our friend circles here in Mumbai. Don't stop your work. All the best.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I want to ask you a charge that I see people making against you and a lot of ex-Muslims very often. This is something that I see, I think, most commonly on Twitter and on social media, is that people like you leave Islam for fortune and fame.
But it's true.
So there you have it, guys. It's 100% true.
Yeah. Why wouldn't I? Anyone would do that.
Yeah. And I mean, they say that they're ignorant, they don't understand the religion, and that's why they leave it, because that they find that they can get paid.
Yeah. Well, I thought about one day. I was again praying on my prayer mat, and I thought, what am I really going to do? How am I going to be successful in this world? How am I going to have a lot of money, be rich, have lots of sex, lots of women, and this and that? And I thought, hey, the best thing would be to just say, hey, I left Islam, and go out there and tell people that I left Islam, and boom, I'm rich.
Right.
I'm rich. I'm successful, and everyone loves me, and
Right.
I can have all the women in this world and that stuff. It's very convenient. So that's obviously why.
Well, also, I mean, the counterpoint to that is if you could have waited, you could have gotten 72 a little bit later on.
Yeah, but who really wants to wait and die?
That's
It's
fair. That's fair. I mean, it's either have one today or 72 later. It's a hard trade-off.
Yeah.
No.
I would rather have them now than 72. Who can deal with 72?
That's fair. That's the part I wonder if that's the part that like the Quran like expounds on, that once you get those 72, do you have to deal with them after?
Yeah.
Like, do you have to live with them and like deal with their shit later on? I don't know. Because that would be horrible, like if you think about it.
It is horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
who really wants to deal with 72?
72, dude.
72.
That's a lot.
What the hell?
Yeah. Oh my god.
But seriously, it was always a weird thing. I mean, sometimes I try to say this. I don't really know how to express this thought. Just to be serious for 1 second. When I was a Muslim, you learn that if you go to heaven and you are a righteous man, and if you are a righteous Muslim, you will have at least 2, or most likely more, women, virgins by your side, who will do whatever you want. They will do anything for you because they have nothing else. They have no consciousness, no mind, nothing. They just
Right.
there to serve you and to have sex with you and to be around you and make you happy. And that is your reward from Allah. And it's kind of a weird thing because you learn that in the Quran, and it's obviously directed at men. So what are the women thinking when they sit there? I always wondered. But I don't know. Growing up in Germany, and just not being in this culture and growing up in a very German way, thinking very German, I always that was something that made me feel uncomfortable when I was a Muslim, and I used to pray to God and to pray to Allah, and I thought, I mean, sometimes I really thought like, okay, Allah makes me this promise, but what does it really mean? You know, what does it? Does it? I mean, I don't want to blaspheme or anything, and
Right.
I really mean my religion. I really mean my faith. I really want to believe in this, but. I was wondering if there is a chance where I would say I don't really want those versions, you know. I mean,
Right.
thank you for giving that to me, but I don't really want that. Is there a possibility I can opt out of that and just live with my wife? You know,
Yeah, just get some KFC instead. You know? How
I
about
thought
like
about I
endless
thought about
KFC for a year? How about that? You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that I thought about when I was religious, and it's kind of it seems very ironic to me when I think about it now that I left Islam. You know, how I don't want to praise myself, as that's what it sounds like, but I was more moral than if that is moral, you know,
Right.
than what the Quran told me.
And I feel like isn't that how there's a lot of Muslim who are like that as well because they read the
Yes.
stuff in there and then they're like, dude, I don't want to hate so and so is a nice guy. Just because he's not Muslim doesn't give me any reason to hate him
Yeah.
or give me any reason to hate my wife or treat my wife like my property or anything like that. You know, there's people probably who are more moral themselves than the books that they're taught to believe in.
Absolutely. I would say most Muslims, I would say the vast majority of Muslims currently in our time are far more moral than the religion itself, than the Quran and the Hadith. They are definitely more moral. And probably 90%, 95% of Muslims today are by far more moral than Muhammad, definitely. But this is a tragedy, you know. This religion gives you a very clear doctrine, a very clear set of ideas that is incredibly immoral, incredibly unacceptable, especially in today's time, especially in terms of the treatment of minorities, the treatment of women, interreligious, intercultural relations, and so on. And many believers of our time who grew up within that faith, who are born into it and grew up with it, actually are much better people than what this religion teaches them. And they have a problem with it. They have a conflict with it. I mean, I see it. I see people trying to come and. I see people trying to come and trying to defend Islam and say stuff like, "Well, this is not what I learned. You know, this is not what Islam is. I mean, Islam is much more beautiful than this. You are making all this stuff up."
Right.
These people are mostly not lying. They are not lying. They're just ignorant because they don't want to be what Islam is. But they also didn't learn it that way because they always learned that Islam is a fantastic, beautiful, morally right religion. They learned that it is the best way to live. And they just can't reconcile these things. They just can't combine their wish to be better with the reality that Islam is a morally incredibly unacceptable religion. So, you know, it's not always, to be very fair, it's not always about how Muslims are bad, or how they are very, very poorly, how they are morally very poor, whatever. It is definitely a fact that many, many Muslims are much, much, much better than the Quran, are much better than the religion, and are much better than Muhammad.
Right.
It's sad that they have to be trapped in that.
Yeah, it is, and that brings me to an important, question as well. And I feel like there's two very distinct camps within the sort of ex-Muslim or Muslim reformist community. Is that, do you think that Islam can be reformed?
No,
No.
absolutely not. I mean, I made a talk about it before, and I believe it can be forcibly modernized, you know,
Okay.
but that is not the same as reform. By forcibly modernized, I mean Muslims are also people in the end, as much as they are indoctrinated with Islam, and they want to. They are born and brought up into modern times that are so quickly changing, so quickly developing, so quickly evolving, and there is so much intercultural, universal influence among cultures in our time. So they are obviously exposed to different ways of thinking and living, than their own. You know, Muslim people are watching American movies, and you obviously can't combine it with your Islamic way of living. You know, it just doesn't work. There is a conflict, and when an Iraqi person who lives a religious life goes home and watches American movies on TV and then realizes that there is something wrong, then what they do is they want to live their religion, but they also want to live according to that ideal world that they see on TV, which they obviously like because they watch it, and this whole conflict and this whole quick development in our time will definitely force Islam to become more and more modernized.
Right.
People will less and less practice Islam. They will more and more be eager to keep up with the modern world, while also still claiming that Islam is absolutely right and flawless, and that Islam wasn't bad at all. So that is kind of what I want to call forced modernization. You know, they will be forcibly modernized, but reform is not possible. There are some movements within Islam who want to reform Islam, who want to bring a different perspective, a different way of different movement of Islam, but they're a very fringe minority. The accepted movements are very clear. The Quran is to be taken literally, the Hadith are to be accepted, and scholars already decided what is right and wrong 1,000 years ago, and we have to follow that. That's what Islam is, and that's what it will be.
Yeah, I feel like if there is to be reform, it needs to be on three fronts. It needs to be on the front that you stop claiming that you have the exclusive knowledge to everything, because that is patently untrue. You stop, because if that were true, then the rest of the world would not be making the scientific advancements and the cultural advancements that they are. So that has been patently proven to be false. Secondly, that those that do not think the way you do, and those that do not have the same background as you, have an illegitimate culture, and their culture is wrong and they're sure to burn in hell. That is also patently untrue, and so that is something that you'll need to get rid of it from your culture. And the third is going to be how the treatment of women is. You know, those three things are going to be the three major pillars on how reform happens, if at all. And so I think that if that does happen, if those three things are addressed, is it even Islam anymore, or is it just something else entirely? You know what I mean? Because those three things are so intrinsic to what Islam is. The question of, I have all the knowledge, that Muhammad is the prophet, he got the final knowledge, there are going to be no more prophets anymore, everybody else is wrong. It is so central to the idea of Islam that if you change that, is that whatever comes out of it, is that even Islam anymore? You know what I mean? So that's what I feel about when I think of Islamic reform. So Islam would need to change quite fundamentally to be
Absolutely.
reformed, right?
Absolutely. It would have to. I mean, as said, there have been reform movements within Islam that try to spread the notion that most of us have misunderstood Islam, that Islam is actually not this. There's actually there is this guy in America who is trying to reform Islam, kind of in his own sphere. Who thinks that Muslim actually means peacemaker and that Islam means peace, and that that Islamic scholars have vastly misinterpreted Islam and made up reports about Muhammad and this and that, and that our ultimate goal is to make peace in this world, and this is how Islam should spread. So he's really trying to tackle the whole religion from all aspects, and trying to change it from all aspects, trying to change the whole intercultural distrust that is very common among Muslims and that people learn from their religion that you have mentioned. He's trying to break down all those fundamental rules, fundamental sources that lead to this way of thinking, and also reinterpreting conflicts that we have in our time and that we will have in the future. But it is a very fringe movement, and it is very vastly rejected. It won't lead anywhere. Right. It has no chance of survival. The thing is, the problem with Islam is that it has a mechanism where it is the only religion that has brought a book that claims to be from the Almighty Creator. It's funny how this is how we began the topic. Islam is the only religion that has managed to do something like that. It has a book that is from the Almighty Creator. Every word in it is directly from the Creator. Nothing in it can be doubted. Nothing in it can be changed. Nothing in it can be denied or rejected. And as long as that is the case, Islam will be the bad religion that it is. And there are some movements within Islam too. Just to add a quick note. There are some movements that call themselves Quranist movements, for example, that go only by the Quran, that reject stuff like hadith, stuff like reports about Muhammad's life in quotes.
Right.
And those tend to be much more peaceful because they reinterpret the Quran in a different way and don't adopt all the toxic stuff in the hadith. But not even that works, because in the end you realize that the authenticity of the Quran is similar or equal to the authenticity of those reports about Muhammad. You either have to accept both of them or you have to reject both of them.
Right.
So it's just a giant. It's a mess. It's impossible, and I firmly believe that there is no chance to reform Islam. I want to throw it into the trash altogether, and that's what I'm. That's kind of what I'm doing.
Because I genuinely feel like, I think there's a space for spirituality in the world and among human beings, because I think human beings are a certain funny kind of creature where they're not fulfilled once their basic needs are met. They long for other things as well. So I feel like there's a space for spirituality in the world, but I do think that spirituality needs to be kind of like a supermarket. You kind of take from, you do your research, you look around, you walk around, you see everything that's available, you pick and choose from what you like, you get rid of what you don't like. I mean, isn't that how spirituality should evolve, rather than, hey, I put down this marker 1400 years ago and nothing changes. I put down this marker 2000 years ago and nothing changes. Reform is not allowed, change is not allowed, because this is the final word. I mean, how do you expect any progress to happen if you lay down, strict rules like that? If Muhammad said, this is my time and this is how I feel like right now, but maybe as the world evolves, smarter people will come around and they'll be like, all right, let's change this. If he put that in the Quran, who knows what the Quran would look like today? Maybe it would look quite different today. If you said, there's totally space for change whatever. Like if you guys develop an iPhone, change that shit and put that in the Quran. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The funny thing is, many Muslims feel very proud of the fact that Islam is the only religion that has a book that can that hasn't been changed, that has been preserved forever, because they think that other religions somehow are supposed to have that same thing too, but have not, which is why they are false and weak, which is very weird logic, and usually people don't understand Muslims when they say that. But I agree with Muslims that it is one of the qualities that makes Islamic indoctrination and tradition very strong, and that makes Muslims very strong, because it teaches them that this is the absolute truth, the absolute message. There is no change to it. There is no question asked, nothing at all. You have to follow it exactly, and everyone follows the same thing, and that is what makes Islamic tradition strong. But it is also what makes Islamic tradition extremely inhuman, and what makes Islamic tradition extremely cruel and dangerous to the rest of the world. Humans are always prone to change. Humans always need change. We always need discussions, and Islam doesn't make it possible, which means it is, which basically means that it is not a good idea.
Right. There's another super chat is from Ganges, and there's another message for you, Ridwan. It says, Apostate Prophet is incredible. I'm following him since 2017. I just want to thank him for everything he's doing, and I hope he's safe from IEDs. Oh my God. Thanks, dude.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, this is what I genuinely feel like, because, and again, I know we just talked about it, but this is something that has been true of ancient cultures in general, and I think Hindu culture in particular. And I'm talking about it obviously because that is my experience, and that is one of the last ancient cultures that is alive today. and so
Uh-huh.
I think it's relevant in a way where it it doesn't proclaim to be the arbiter of the truth. It understands that people have different journeys, people have different acumen and understanding. So one size fits all approach cannot work. It simply
Hmm.
cannot work. People are way too different. And so, what's interesting to me from a Muslim point of view is when Muslims say, "Oh, this is idolatry and it's so bad." It's in a way a kind of a personalization method. It's like you can personalize the way you want to see God or any deity or something like that. It's a way of personalizing your relationship with whatever the hell it is that you believe. So for you, God could be a mountain, as it is in like Native American culture or Maori culture in New Zealand. It could be a mountain, could be a deity, and an island could be a deity,
Yeah.
or it could be a statue of He-Man. I don't know, but like a statue of He-Man could be a deity. But the thing is, as long as you're not hurting people, as long as you're not saying that this is the only way to do it, as long as you're not saying that this is scientifically correct or anything like that. I mean, what's to stop you from finding your own spiritual path? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
But yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, you finish.
No, I was pretty much done. Go ahead.
Well, Islam has this thing. It has kind of adopted and completely misunderstood Judaism. Judaism was a nation religion that had this idea that this is our belief. We are the people of the one God, and we have to obey Him. We have to follow Him. We have to stay loyal to Him, so we can be great and glorious and protected from this and that. Whatever. That's how Jews developed, and that's how Jews kind of took their history. They had their own religion. They rejected their idols before, and they thought this is the way we go. And Islam came several thousand years afterward and suddenly adopted the idea that idols are wrong, but not only that idols are wrong for us, that idols are wrong for everyone, and we have to destroy them wherever we find them.
Right.
It is a giant misunderstanding of how Judaism started and came into this world, and it is still going on and trying to do its thing. So
Yeah, and I think the other anger, I think one of the key sources of anger for the Jewish people probably comes from Muhammad's interaction with the Jews, because there were many Jewish villages that Muhammad went to and preached to who did not take him seriously at all.
yeah.
And I can imagine for someone with a bit of an ego, that would probably upset them a lot.
Of course.
Yeah.
According to reports, they made fun of him. They came and
Right.
challenged him, and they ridiculed him, and they thought, you're not the prophet. What is this?
Right.
So he became very mad, and he declared them their giant enemy.
Right, right. And isn't it incredible? Like if you stand back and think about it for a second, just from an unattached perspective, isn't it incredible that one guy didn't like Jews because they made fun of him because he was making some claims that were unsubstantiated.
Uh-huh.
Because of that, almost like, well, I'm not going to say every single one, but like a very large number of people hate Jews as their mortal enemies. Isn't that an incredible thing?
It is incredible, but that's what such strong indoctrination does. I mean, you can even read that today. You can go on specific websites that teach you and answer questions about Islam. I just recently went on one that was a fundamentalist website, and I was reading about the topic on Muhammad's death and how he was killed by a Jewish woman who poisoned him as form of a revenge, because Muhammad's armies killed her tribe and family, and she
Right.
poisoned Muhammad and killed him. And this fundamentalist Islamic website was basically telling its readers, who are asking questions to better follow Islam, it was telling its readers how this is one of the reasons why we have an ongoing conflict, disagreement, and hostility with the Jews.
Right.
The Jews.
Right.
Of course, because they have also killed our prophets, just like they killed many other prophets. And Islam has this mentality that some Jews did something, one Jew did something, or two Jews did something, or a specific group of Jews did something, which means there is now a conflict between Muslims and Jews forever for the next 2,000 years, and every Jew is responsible for the fault of this specific Jewish group, and because this specific Jewish group acted in a certain way, it means that all Jews are like that, and we can't trust them. Islam has this toxic way of thinking. It spreads this very conveniently.
Yeah, and I know that story as well that you're talking about. I think it was a woman whose, I think, village was murdered and his husband and father were killed.
Yeah.
And then I think Muhammad made him one of his wives, or I'm not sure, but she was living with him, and then she was, obviously I can imagine somebody being angry if you see your husband and your father get murdered by someone. So she tried to poison him, and if you look at it in context, it doesn't appear to be like, oh my God, the Jews are conspiring against the Muslims.
Yeah.
It just sounds like somebody was really pissed off for good reason.
Well, she invited him over and said, I have some lamb to offer.
Right.
Please eat. And Muhammad was weird enough to sit down and eat from the food of a woman whose entire
whose family he just
tribe he
murdered.
just killed.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing to like create animosity towards a people based on a story that is told largely out of context as well.
Yeah.
It's a silly thing. All right, Ridwan, before I let you go, I just want to get like your final word on. I know, if you wanna give us an idea of maybe what sort of projects you're working on in the future.
Well, thank you for
your channel. Yeah.
I'm currently still working. I had a little bit of difficulty recently. I had a lot of a time where I didn't post videos regularly anymore. The reach of my channel went down very much because I didn't do anything for a very long time. I focused on studying the Quran and making these scientific Quran mistakes. Now that I have released that, I want to go further into making Quran mistakes again. I want to make another study on talking about all the scientific mistakes in the Quran. No, all the historical mistakes in the Quran, all the factual mistakes in the Quran. I want to go into analyzing further and discussing the scientific mistakes of the Quran. I also want to go back to making regular videos every week on all kinds of Islamic issues, on Islamic culture, on Islamic prayer, on Islamic theology, on how Islam differs from different cultures, and so on. So there will be a lot of stuff, and at the same time, I'm also currently writing a book that I will hopefully have finished at the end of this year or next year, and I want to publish that. So, yeah. Oh
man, great things to look forward to.
I hope I can do all of them in a good time.
No, that's great. And finally, there's a ton of questions in here, but let me just put them into one. What's your sort of advice to the Muslim community at this point of time?
To the Muslim community, I would always suggest just being open. We are now in a time where people are more connected. We are closer to each other. We are connected more and more to each other. We are able to talk each other. I would always suggest to everyone, but also especially in this case to people of Muslim culture and Muslim backgrounds, to be open about your own beliefs, to be open about your own tradition and your culture, and to not to be afraid to just openly talk about things. Not to be afraid to sit down and have discussions. I have, for example, never been someone who has attacked individuals or attacked religious groups based on who they are and what they are. I think everyone should abstain from that. I think everyone should be able to come together and have proper, fruitful discussions in order to solve the problems that we are talking about all the time. Also, just understand people. Right. Just sit down and understand people. Listen to people. Is what I would eternally suggest and demand. Yeah. And stay away from Islam.
Well, there you go. Yeah. All right, well, guys, thanks very much for everyone who's joined us. Thanks very much for everyone who's supported on Super Chat. It's been great fun having you along for the ride. As I spoke to Ridwan, it's been great fun talking to you as well. So thanks for coming on today, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here again for a talk. Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, no, it was great fun, and hopefully we'll have you on sometime in the future as well.
Hopefully.
And yeah, for sure. And guys, thanks again for watching today. If you liked today's episode, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Please make sure to go check out Ridwan's channel as well. It's called the Apostate Prophet. I will leave a link in the description of this video below as well. So go check out his channel, go subscribe to him. It makes a lot of great content. Make sure to go check it out if you haven't already. I will see you guys for the next episode. And until then, stay happy, stay healthy,